I'll click OK. Welcome to Prepping for the Sharks, where you tune in to practical and tactical tips for building your business, featuring our live hot seat pitch coaching show. I'm Burke Franklin. I developed the first business planning software system called Biz Plan Builder, simplifying creating your business growth roadmap, operating plan, and if you need it, you'll make sense to investors to raise capital. Also with me are our co-hosts. Robert Browning is a proven senior executive, entrepreneur, and event producer with the Speakers Forum. He's a community leader with Youth at Risk, with more than 40 years of successful business development experience. Fred Parrish is the original creator of Prepping for the Sharks. He's a seasoned executive, a COO, CFO, CEO, and from leading startups to IPOs, running a global operation. He's now a management advisor, and he's a Vistage chair. Overall, Fred focuses on improving business performance, and even co-authored with Michael Gerber, the E-Myth CFO. Usually we feature an entrepreneur in our hot seat pitch, but today we're recording one of our behind the scenes conversations. It's all about nonprofits. Robert, you want to lead off on that?
Yeah, nonprofits is one of our three key areas that we focus on. Entrepreneurs, nonprofits, and small businesses. They have a lot in common, but there are some unique differences as well. I know, Fred, you've talked about a lot of the things that are the same. What would you have to say about what's similar, Fred?
Yeah, I think that, the way people inside nonprofits look at nonprofits is not necessarily accurate, and that can create problems. In fact, I've sat on the board of, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 nonprofits. I'm on the board of a couple right now. And there is one in particular that great people, great approach, great mission, just in every way, an excellent situation, except they just really don't have a grasp on the idea that it's a business. The nonprofit designation or legal structure has to do with taxes. Nonprofits are not taxed. So, yeah, okay, that's a benefit. But that doesn't mean that you change the way you look at the world, or that you change the way that you operate, or that you don't need money to do things. Well, you do. And, nonprofits can go out of business just like every other business. If you don't have cash, you're dead. And it's amazing to me. I mean, it amazes me a lot about small businesses too. But the thing about a nonprofit, it is really, in a lot of cases, even more urgent that you have enough cash, because the way you go about getting cash is a totally different approach to the world than a for-profit company. For-profit companies sell something, they get paid, and they will survive if they can sell for whatever they're selling, product or service or whatever it is, for more than what it costs them to deliver it. That's it. There is no difference between a for-profit and a not-for-profit entity in that regard. The thing about most nonprofits, and it's not true for every nonprofit, but most nonprofits don't have something that they are charging their market for. They're not going to charge if it's a nonprofit that is helping, unwed mothers, giving them a place to live, giving them, food, and helping with their babies and helping them find a job. They don't really have anything that they're selling to that single mother. So they have to go somewhere else and get cash. They go to either people or organizations that will provide funds for them to do those things. So as you can imagine, that's a totally different orientation to the world. But people in those nonprofits look at their mission, and they just a lot of times believe that everybody is going to believe in their mission, and everybody is going to give them money for their mission, and it's just not true. I mean, there are a lot of benevolent people in this world, but there are more people who are not.
True.
And certain organizations will give lots of money. I know several that will give millions. But there are much more opportunities in a for-profit company to generate cash than there is a not-for-profit organization. It is just a different dynamic in that way. But in every other way, you have to manage it like a business, and you have to think about cash, and you have to do forecasts. You have to make sure you have the cash well in advance and when you're going to need it, especially in a nonprofit, because you can't just go to a big bank, and a lot of big banks will give money to certain kinds of causes. But you can't go to a bank this week and say, well, I need $250,000 next week. Can you write me a check? It doesn't work like that. So that's the one thing that, in my experience, people just have not really internalized.
Reminds me of that, rather than love the truth, we make true what we love, and maybe are over idealistic. I know, Burke, you have some things you do on your company website with business planning, et cetera,
right,
with a focus on nonprofit there.
Well, one thing like to Fred's point, what I heard, the simple term is it's a nonprofit. It's not a management style. It's a tax status. But what's the difference between a profit business and a nonprofit? You're still managing a business, and it's just a tax status. That's really the only real difference. And a lot of people think, well, I'm running a nonprofit. People should just give me money. And the thing about that is, my mom donates to different nonprofits. The one that comes to mind is a donkey rescue. And so, one of the things that I think a lot of nonprofits overlook or maybe need to consider is when the donors are done, she donates money to the donkey rescue. She wants to rescue donkeys. So it better buy carrots and veterinary visits, not new trucks for the company, new offices, computers. And when she donates, and then she gets these letters saying, hey, thank you for this, and here, get a free tote bag and all this. And she says, why are you sending me this stuff? I'm not buying this stuff. I don't need notoriety that I rescued donkeys. I just know that I did. Buy another bag of carrots instead of sending me a bag. And so it's really it's not really return on investment that donors are looking for. It's return on impact. So there's still an ROI. So I look at my webpage, I've got it here. It's like, if the question is who can do the most. So if you're comparing who should I donate to, if I was a donor, who can do the most good in the world with my donation?
Right.
Is it you or somebody else? And so you're in a way, to your point, Fred, they're competing with other nonprofits, other people saving the world in their unique way. And the donor looks at this and says, well, who's gonna that fits with my heart, pulls my heartstrings and my desires. How can I help these people? And who can I do that through most efficiently?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that is one of the main differences between a for-profit and a not-for-profit. The for-profit, whoever your customer is buying something that they need or they want to use. A not-for-profit is they are giving you funds for something they are passionate about. Two totally different dynamics. But again, the operational approach should be exactly the same.
And Fred, what do you think about some nonprofits that pay the people that run it opulent salaries, and maybe what actually ends up helping people on the nonprofit side is way smaller than it should or could be? I always remember Elton John when he was supporting the AIDS issue. He was famous because a vast majority of all money taken in went right out to help people, where some organizations, that amount is much smaller. Have you dealt
Right.
with that, Fred?
And that is a big metric that a lot of people look at, and especially the big donors that they give, a few $1 million, they want to make sure that the percentage of their money that goes to the actual programs inside the nonprofit is very large. If you're spending 50% on people and admin and meetings and this and that and the other thing, once people find that out, that starts to look a little bit like a money laundering kind of thing.
Right.
And honestly, there are a lot of nonprofits that have been set up specifically for that purpose.
I've heard that.
Nonprofit after nonprofit after nonprofit, and they're just filtering money through 10 layers of that, and everybody's siphoning money off the top. And when you get to the end of the line, there's almost nothing left for whatever the so-called cause is. But that's not for the run-of-the-mill not-for-profit, or at least in my experience. So, I'm helping a little bit a nonprofit, and they are a filmmaker for films about Israel and how Christians should be supporting Israel and the Jewish people, not the Jewish government. Totally different thing. Yeah. And so there are a lot of nuances there. There's another nonprofit that I am involved with, is a veteran organization. And they help veterans who are retiring to either buy or start a business. And great mission, great people, but they all need to keep in mind that they're in a business. It's just, like you said, Burke, their tax status is different than the for-profit companies, but everything else is the same. Now, the accounting is different.
Yeah. Like profits called what? A surplus. It's not called profit.
Right. Well, yeah, it's the accounting. There are specific accounting firms and accountants who do nonprofit accounting. Most companies, most accountants or accounting firms that do, smaller ones, will either do for-profit or not-for-profit. They probably don't do both because the accounting is quite different. They don't even call the financial statements the same things. The balance sheet is the statement of financial position. The income statement is, I forget what they call that right off the top of my head, but it's not the income statement. That's not what they call it. So and when you're trying to forecast, it's different because you don't have a normal revenue stream. You have chunks of cash coming in, and you're hoping that's going to come in at the end of July. But if it doesn't come in until the end of August, or part of it comes in the third week of August, the other part comes in the middle of November, yeah, you got all your money, but are you going to still be there by the end of November? So you just got to be nimble enough to find a way to operate until you can get the funds.
I've got these findings on my site here where I talk about Info Group asked 1,059 American adults about their charitable practices and weighted the responses for a representative sample of the U.S. population. Among the findings, 50% give when they have a clear idea of the charity's objectives. That talks to my business plan because they use business plans. And, the other thing too is that most of these donors are business people. That's where they made their money. So they're expecting some kind of plan, like, what are you going to do with this? Where a business plan helps a nonprofit. It's said differently, obviously, but these donors want to see if you've got a plan, anyway. So consumers are driven to give the most when they understand the context behind the need. So basically, kind of the context, like, what's the nice person like you doing in a business like this? What's happening behind the scenes here? And it's crucial for nonprofits to effectively communicate that with their audience. Now, the other thing, there's 79% of respondents donate money because it makes them feel good to help others. 47% of women say they give when they feel emotionally moved by someone's story, compared to 33% of men. And fewer than half of donors were given a follow-up as to how their donation was used. So that would be important. The newsletter about what you're doing and how many donkeys you've fed would be much better than some kind of tote bag.
Yeah, and when I give, there is a website. I forget the name of it now, but it rates nonprofits, and it gives the principals, the officers' salaries. It tells what percentage of donations go to the programs and what percentage goes to admin. So there are places you can go to get that information. And so when I'm going to give money to someone, I look at all those things, and I usually will give the money unless I'm specifically looking to give it to a particular purpose. I will look at those metrics and normally give the money to an organization that isn't paying their senior management $500,000 a year. So, and there are some out there that do that.
Yeah. Now, on running a nonprofit, you have a board, you have an executive director. Yeah. Can you speak to those roles and what a executive director should be doing and a board, and how wide should the focus be as far, or if you go too wide and have too much of a split focus, what would that, could you talk about those things?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the board responsibilities and function basically the same. You have a fiduciary obligation for oversight, and you need to hold that management team accountable for whatever plans they provide, whatever objectives they have. If they are submitting, grant documents, they're applying for a grant from a big bank or some other organization, a family office, and they tell those organizations they're going to do certain things. The board is responsible for making sure they do those certain things. Now, you can't guarantee success in every case, but you at least have to try. If you tell somebody you're going to do these things and you have this metric for helping this number of people, and you only accomplish a fraction of that, that's a problem. And
is the board liable?
Have to hold those people accountable. Sorry?
Is the board liable if there's some improprieties or mismanagement going on?
Not nearly as much as if there is as a for-profit company. The board in a for-profit company definitely can be sued. And that is why most companies that have outside board members, any person that really understands the liability and the exposure for a board position, not an advisory board, but a corporate board position in a for-profit company, you will require that the company carry D&O coverage to protect you and the officers of the company.
You said E&O as in errors and omissions.
Well, D&O is directors and officers.
Directors and officers.
E&O
Okay.
is E&O. Yeah, there is an E&O coverage that usually has to do with security and software, and if you make an error and that causes a financial problem, you need to have coverage for that. But yes, directors and officers for the board.
I wanted to ask Burke, for our 3 minutes left, and you've helped so many thousands of businesses, Burke, and nonprofits. What thoughts do you want to leave our audience? We just have a couple of minutes left.
Well, yeah, there's a big piece we haven't touched on. My mom has run several nonprofits, and she gets into these things, and so I hear some of this stuff overhand. But I was talking to her one day about managing people, and she was saying, "Remember, you're running a for-profit company where you're paying people to work for you, so you've got expectations, you've got there's accountability. They've got to get their job done. Remember, in a nonprofit, most of the people are volunteers, so you're not paying them; they're volunteers, and so you've got to be, let's just say, more nicer to them, and more polite to them, if you want. That's not the right words. I do that same thing with my own people, but if you just remember that they're out of the graciousness or the kindness of their heart, working on it for the mission of the organization. So, which is why it's really important to have that mission front and center. Have all of the goals, everything there is clear. Everybody's pulling in the same direction, and you remember that they're volunteers. That's really a big difference. They're not employees; they're volunteers. So if they can't make it to a meeting, beat them up. It's just they've got to do something else, but they're here when they can, kind of a thing. And so,
well, and there are nonprofits that are paying full market salary. So you just need to know which is which.
Right, they're volunteers. Right, but if they're paid, you're an employee for sure.
Yeah,
so
they're paid. They have to be held accountable.
Yep. Right. So if you have an executive director and they're being paid, they have to be held accountable.
Just like the CEO of a company.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's important that everybody understands the objectives and the priorities and all that stuff, just like a business. Why the business plan is important. You get people running off doing their thing, a bright, shiny object, and they chase that. No, you've got to stay focused, especially with a nonprofit, because you don't have as much money to work with, I don't think. So at least that's been my experience. So
yeah.
And Burke, you have something on your Business Power Tools website, some items that are custom made for nonprofits as well, don't you?
Yeah, the business plan will tailor itself to a nonprofit, and we have a special version of the financial model for nonprofits as well. So there's that. So you've got those two things. This is really part of it for designing the nonprofit from the get-go. If you haven't done that yet, you want to have a plan and you want to see how this thing plays out. And there's a 5-year model that projects what the nonprofit's what it's going to do, where the money's coming from, whether it's an in-kind donation, whether it's cash donations, and there's about 10 different channels for bringing in money.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
that's right.
And then how do you spend it, invest it, if you will, and what does it look like at the end? So, you could show that to a potential donor, like here's what we're doing, here's what it looks like, here's where your money's going.
And we're at the end of our time frame that we had available today. And of course, we're prepping for thesharks.com. You can find out about us there. We have the 5-minute 5-point pitch challenge that you can present. It's an amazing thing. We have so much more going on. Thanks for talking about nonprofits today.
Okay, good deal.
So join us. Come to preppingforthesharks.com. And we'll send you emails and invite you to more talks like this. We'll invite you to our 5-minute 5-point